The rest of the way tonight, we are going to return you to NBC's national coverage of The Vote, America's Future here on Channel 2.
But starting momentarily at 9, join us on WGRZ.com and Facebook. Good evening, everyone. It is decision night in America, and the polls just closed here in New York State. We want to say thank you to everyone who's joining us on our website, on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube for joining us as we wait for the results to come in.
And we're going to be checking in with a whole lot of reporters around the area tonight. Also, analysts here in the studio as we see those numbers come in. But first, let's take a look at the races that we are following for you tonight.
You have to start with the most hotly contested race out here. Republican Chris Collins and Democrat Nate McMurray, a race that was expected to be pretty easy for Collins until his arrest and indictment on insider trading charges. Now, polls have had this one pretty neck and neck recently, despite the big Republican advantage in the district.
Statewide, we already have a winner. NBC News calling the governor's race for Governor Cuomo.
And the Attorney General's race opened up after Eric Schneiderman's resignation earlier this year after domestic abuse accusations. Lawyers Keith Wofford and Letitia James are competing for the job. Either one, of course, would be the first Black Attorney General in New York State history. Well, there are plenty more races that we'll be sharing results from as they come in. And we've watched all day as people have talked about huge turnout at their polling places.
And we are just now starting to get some exit poll information from around New York State.
Our Michael Wooten has the numbers for us, and he is in our information center. Michael, are they starting to come in?
Hey guys, literally these drop right at the top of the hour, right when polls close. NBC News has already projected Andrew Cuomo the winner, but the exit polls kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and tell us why that was the case. If you look here at the top, this always breaks down, first of all, by gender. Mark Molinaro actually winning, according to the exit polls, beating Cuomo 49% to 46%. But you talk about this huge gender gap. When it comes to women who make up, interestingly enough, 47% of the vote, there are more men voting in New York State this time around than women. That's not usually the case. But when you look at the female vote, look at this gender gap. 67% going with Cuomo versus just 30% going for the Republican Molinaro. We can also break this down by age group. Now, if you look right here, the youngest voters, those 18 to 29. These two groups, not enough data in order to break them down, but all other age groups, Governor Cuomo winning there. And then you look 18 to 24, Cuomo just running away with it, also winning voters 45 and over. But the gender gap, at least in the governor's race, I think is an initial storyline as we look at these exit polls. This matters. It gives us a sense of what's going on. But again, NBC News already projecting Governor Cuomo holding on to this seat and beating Republican Mark Molinaro. I can let you guys know we don't have any exit poll results for the House races. Those were not part of this. So we don't have a sense right now about the 27th district. There have been a couple of downstate House seats that have been called for the Democrats. They're kind of expected, but for the most part, all of the House races, they're going to wait to get some vote in before any projections are made. That's certainly the case with our House race here in Western New York, the 27th district, that we expect to be quite close.
Very interesting results. I mean, that gender gap is kind of a little bit of a shocker, Michael. Did you see anything in the days leading up to the election that number was going to pop like that? We saw that in some of the polls. I didn't see polls that showed 67 to 30, this female gender gap in favor of Andrew Cuomo. I didn't see numbers quite that big. I'm going to go back right now and look at the Siena poll, the Quinnipiac poll, some of those that came out lately. But 67 to 30 is a massive gender gap. And then when you look at men, 49 to 46, these have margins of error just like normal polls do, the exit polls. So that's probably within the exit poll, pretty much close to a tie when it comes to men. But Andrew Cuomo just racking up a huge advantage among female voters.
It'd be interesting to see what maybe they can break it down, the exit pollsters, into a particular issue or two.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be even more interesting.
Listen, if we scroll down, and I got this literally a couple of minutes ago, we don't have access to these numbers until right when the polls close. So as we scroll down here, I mean, this is broken down by race, by education, by, do you have a college degree? Do you not have a college degree? And it gives us a lot of insight into why Andrew Cuomo is declared the winner, and then we match that up with the vote as it starts to come in. Nothing else. The one thing we should look at here is region, because we always talk about this divide between upstate New York, including us, and then the New York City area. And I believe, here we go. So this is New York City, 80% for Governor Cuomo, 16% for Mark Molinaro. And a quarter of the vote is in New York City. Long Island, pretty much divided. And then you look at urban upstate, 58% for Cuomo, 38% for Molinaro. Rural upstate, they're saying not enough data. Hudson Valley, not enough data. Now, the way these exit polls work, this is based mainly on what was earlier in the day. And so if there were exit polls, say, taken from 6 to 9 o'clock, that data will continually be also input into this system. So these numbers might change a little bit. We might get enough raw data so that we'll get a sense of how people in rural upstate and in the Hudson Valley fit into this. But two things for Andrew Cuomo: winning the female vote so overwhelmingly, and then also just racking up this huge margin in New York City. That's why you have already, as soon as the polls closed, a projection for Andrew Cuomo the winner.
Yeah,
really interesting. Yeah, we thank you, Michael. We've got a couple salty dogs in studio coming up who've been at this political game a long time.
Yes, they have.
We've got Bruce Fisher and Carl Calabrese, so we'll have their 2 cents in just a minute. But thank you for that. Yeah.
Right now we are going to check in with our Ron Plants. He is live tonight at Erie County Republican headquarters. The event there, headquarters at least for tonight, which is taking place at the Avant. Ron, what's happening there? Looks pretty quiet right now.
Yeah, Scott, Mary Alice, obviously with the polls just closing, nobody really here but us media mice, if you will. But at this point, we're waiting to people to start to come back into the room now. We did just moments ago get a chance to hear from GOP chair here in Erie County, Nick Langworthy, and everybody's been talking about that turnout today, how amazed they were with the number of people turning out. All right, we decided to get some Republican perspective on that turnout, and here's what Langworthy had to say.
I feel very good about the turnout. We've seen large numbers really everywhere. I mean, these numbers blow 2014 out of the water, the last gubernatorial election. I think they'll exceed 2010, which was the year that Carl Palladino was our nominee. We had a hometown candidate here. So, I mean, I'm seeing some election districts in key areas, good Republican areas, that are exceeding 70% turnout. It's wild. No one called this. No one anticipated this. And, I chalk it up to a few things. I mean, one, everything has changed since the 2016 presidential election. And there are more Americans, there are more New Yorkers engaged in the process than ever before. People are following politics not just at election time, it's year-round. And you know, largely due to all of your stations and media outlets, it is a full-time part of the American life. And I think that more and more people are exercising their right to vote. I think that's very good, you know, for democracy. We're seeing record votes cast all over the country tonight. In a midterm election, this turnout's just wild.
Even though the Democrats have a significant enrollment edge here in Erie County, Langworthy feels that significant turnout in some of those Republican districts, and he was, by the way, mentioning Orchard Park and some other areas too, as really being significant in terms of turnout and how that could help some of his GOP candidates. Obviously, the big question is Chris Collins in terms of the 27th Congressional District. We, in particular, asked Langworthy about the fact that there are no Chris Collins signs here at the GOP headquarters. Now, he pointed out that, frankly, the Collins campaign had not given them any, and also he said, obviously, that that is a federal race. But there's still that disconnect there between the Collins campaign and the GOP here in Erie County, and I think that's reflected somewhat by this. Needless to say, though, Langworthy still expects that Collins will carry the district. As to what that will mean going further, well, we'll have to see. But again, that sets the scene here at the Erie County Republican headquarters for this election night, and we'll wait to hear from some of the other candidates and see as the results come in. I'll turn it back to you guys. All
right, Ron, thank you very much for that update, and interesting the difference taking place between Chris Collins' camp and, you know, Nick Langworthy and the chairman.
Apparently, yeah, a little bit of love loss
between
the two of them right there. Right. Well, we're going to head out now to the Erie County Democratic Party election night headquarters in Larkinville. Our Kelly Dudzik is there, and oh, it looks like there's a little more activity where you are, Kelly. It was sort of kind of dull at the Republican Party headquarters. What's going on there?
Well, people are just starting to get here, Scott and Mary Alice. We're on the 8th floor of the Larkin Center of Commerce here in Larkinville, where the Erie County Democrats are holding their watch party this evening. Of course, you just heard Ron talk about the most watched race in the county tonight, New York's 27th Congressional District, where challenger Nate McMurray is trying to unseat Republican Chris Collins, who's indicted on federal charges. You heard Ron say that there were no Chris Collins signs where he is. There are plenty of Nate McMurray signs here tonight. We also have people streaming in and watching coverage from across the country tonight as the Democrats hope to retake the House and the Senate. I'll be posting live updates throughout the evening on my social media pages as people get up to give their victory speeches. Reporting live in Larkinville tonight, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
All right, thanks very much, Kelly. Well, we told you at the top of the broadcast that NBC News had called the governor's race for Governor Cuomo, who will serve a third term. And there is yet another race to call for you tonight. No surprise here. NBC News has called the Senate race for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She beats Republican Shelley Farley easily to win her second full term in the Senate. Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have some political analysts in studio with us to help us move through the night. That's right. Steve is over there at the Election Central over there. We have Bruce Fisher with us and Carl Calabrese. Steve?
Hi there, Scott and Mary Alice. Yes, we're over here. We're putting phones down. The floor director saying, please put the phones down. We're about to be on television. So let's, and raise your hand, Bruce.
Guilty. I was earlier referred to as a salty dog. Arf, arf.
Which is a nice way of saying old. But
yeah. Hey.
And we're all wearing glasses because we've been staring at screens with small numbers on them. Let's start at start. The turnout way higher than most projections had even rosily thought it could be. Is this political engagement? Is this one party's really good work out here? What do we think, Bruce? What do we think, Carl?
Listen, everybody knew that this was going to be a meaningful, impactful election. So I know that Democrats have been rallying for a very long time because their narrative is that America's future is at stake, and this election is where we have to take back the House, get the investigations going, hold the administration to account, address global warming, health care, all the issues that are so dear to Democrats. Republicans, in the meantime, feel, now that this is Trump's party, that they have to be with the man that they poll for. I was not surprised that Democrats were turning out. I'm a little bit surprised that Republicans are coming out in enormous numbers.
And Carl's shaking his head.
No, I'm not anymore.
You're not surprised. Now, let's put it into context. This is a blue county in a blue state. And yet you think Republican turnout is just as energized as Democrat?
Oh, I think it is across the country. And it wasn't until the Kavanaugh hearings. Up until then, every single poll showed that Democrats were on fire. They've been on fire since election night 2016. Republicans, for the most part, the Trump coalition was pretty much disengaged with this election cycle until two things, the Kavanaugh hearings and then the caravan. And those two things lit a fuse for the Republican base that brought them up equal to the Democrat base. And that's what you're seeing tonight here and all over the country. People are energized and they're getting out to vote.
All right, translate this for me. We've got New York 27. It's Collins, McMurray.
It's a Republican district, an ancestral behavioral Republican district. If they're not registered as Republicans, they're registered as independents.
So you as a Democrat are already waving the white flag on this one?
There's grown-ups and then there's people who are in fantasy land, okay? And those of us who do this for a living every once in a while just have to face facts. Nate McMurray's running a fabulous, valiant, impressive, heartwarming campaign in a behaviorally, ancestrally Republican district.
See it the same way?
Yeah, this is the most pro-Trump, pro-Republican congressional district in New York State, maybe one of the most pro-Trump congressional districts in the country. And so structurally, this was going to be really tough to lose. Obviously, with all the problems Chris Collins has, it's been a lot closer than it ever should be. But I think when it's all said and done, people are going to vote to keep that seat in the red column and not send it over to the blue column.
And in terms of McMurray's campaign, he did something that the previous two cycles was not able to do, was make Chris Collins actually campaign. Because essentially, he hadn't in previous two cycles. I don't even know if he had a campaign headquarters in his last two cycles.
Wonderful campaign, wonderful candidate, wonderful message, wonderful enthusiasm. Oh my gosh, the engagement, okay? The folks on corners, street corners in Batavia and Warsaw and North Tonawanda. But you know, the numbers are the numbers, and I'm hopeful that things will turn out for the young guy who's trying and so positive. But the numbers are the numbers.
So essentially, and I hate to be blunt in this particular way, Carl, but the only person who can take out Collins is a federal prosecutor.
And that may prove to be the case someday. We don't know. I mean, there's a whole other drama ready to be played out after this election night, and that's going to happen in the court. And Chris Collins says he's innocent. He ought to be presumed innocent until proven otherwise.
Correct.
He deserves his day in court.
Huge political liability, though.
No question about it. I do think, though, that maybe with a different campaign, he may have opened up a little more of a lead. I was not real impressed with the campaign and the consultants they hired to put together the messaging and the commercials. Wasn't impressed at all. I thought they could have done a much better job in explaining why it was important to keep Chris Collins in that seat now and keep that seat Republican.
You know, that's an important point, Carl, because there's been a lot of ugliness released on Chris Collins' behalf, okay? There's a lot of ugliness on the street, and it's coming from what looked like Republican consultants who said you have to go negative to depress and suppress turnout.
Well, the thing of it is, negative ads work.
And that's
no one likes them, but they work.
They work.
What you're going to see is the scorpion's tail hitting in the bluer areas of Erie County. So the same piece was used against Nate McMurray and against Pat Burke, an assembly candidate in the South Buffalo area. Okay. Right. It was used in a couple of other races. And you know what? In Pat Burke's case, what I'm hearing from my folks out in South Buffalo, West Seneca, Cheektowaga, is that really didn't play well. And that independents who might have gone Republican, as they so often do these days, have said, wait a minute, we're not going there. We don't like that.
Let me jump off that. Because there's this energized negative activity for Democrats against Donald Trump. Is that what we're kind of seeing with the governor's race here tonight, where we've got so much energy being put in by the governor running against the one guy whose approval numbers statewide in the state?
Wait, there's a governor's race? Was there one?
There was a governor's race. There was a governor's race. But that seemed to be the strategy, because if you take a look at statewide polling, you take a look at approval ratings and job performance numbers, the governor's numbers are not that good. His benefit of running against Donald Trump is his numbers are a lot worse.
There's no question the governor's strategy was to run against Donald Trump more than Marcus Molinaro. But in reality, it almost doesn't matter in this state. The governor was going to win this race the day he beat Cynthia Nixon. It's just that blue of a state. His numbers have always been very strong. There was a minor tail off in this last poll. If you looked at it, it was because the Republicans were coming home. He went from 21% Republican vote to 12, and that pretty much accounted for that slippage. But this is one of the most bluest of blue states in this country, and I don't think he was ever in danger or even heard footsteps.
What I was wondering is whether or not Cuomo would get north of 50. You know, and supply the Republicans with a moral victory. You didn't get a majority because you've got two other candidates in the race.
But look at the exit polling that we just saw from our colleague. When you see women, especially suburban women, trending the way they did for Andrew Cuomo, this is not just Westchester County. This is Amherst. This is Orchard Park. This is Cheektowaga. This is Lancaster.
It's pretty much a universal indicator.
Yeah, this is okay, yes. And that's why at this early stage, when we don't have any numbers in the Collins versus McMurray race, and then the Ray Walter race in Amherst, the Burke race, that's why you still can't close the door on those candidacies, because when the women are trending that strongly for one candidate, that tends to mean that's not the only race that they're going to pay attention to.
To jump completely around, is the closest statewide race the Attorney General's race? The Wofford-Tish James race?
I don't know that people are going to desert the governor's line for Wofford, whose name recognition is not much.
I just don't see any gains by the Republican Party statewide. I mean, there's almost no Republican Party statewide as an organization and as an entity that can win campaigns. So I don't think any of these are going to be close tonight.
State Senate?
Well, the state Senate's a different issue because we're talking districts now.
Yes. Right, no, understand that.
And I think the fight for the state Senate is going to be in the Long Island districts and in the Hudson Valley district. That will determine who controls that body.
And the congressional districts. A lot of these state Senate districts are almost as big as congressional districts.
And my sources that are pretty good in terms of knowing the poll numbers are saying that those Senate races are pretty close. They're pretty close. We're all within the margin of error, so we'll have to see what happens. But it's, you know, the demographics of this state lead me, you know, I've always said this, it's amazing the Republicans have kept the Senate as long as they have. It really is when you look at the makeup of individual Senate districts across the state. And if they pull it off again tonight, I thought, it's
the magic of line drawing, Carl.
Well,
the
I
magic
understand
of the
that,
map.
but I thought they were going to lose it in the presidential year. If there ever was a year the Democrats were going to take back the state Senate, it would have been in a presidential year when you get that boost in the Democrat vote. Didn't happen. So, you know, it's just, as I say, it's really kind of a political phenomenon that they've held it this long.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to take a look at. It looks like a long night with that decision still hanging in the balance. Carl, Bruce, thank you very much. Scott and Mary Alice, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Carl. Stay there. We'll check in with you guys a little bit later on also.
I love our salty dogs.
Yeah.
They never disappoint. Could listen to them all night, and we'll have more throughout the evening as well.
We're getting saltier, too.
Yeah, I know. Okay, you didn't have to go there. All right. Well, anyway, let's head out to another campaign headquarters. Our Dave McKinley is in Hamburg, and he is at the Nate McMurray campaign headquarters there. So what's the story? Much activity there yet, Dave?
Well, we could tell you, Mary Alice, Nate McMurray is not here yet, but we are told he has finally come in from the cold. He spent much of the day at a church not far from here, standing outside, greeting voters for hours today. But that wind and rain finally drove him in before the polls closed at 9. So here's the situation here now. People are starting to gather, watching the early returns on television. JT, our photographer, can go on over there. If there was a theme for this election, it might be overcoming, for Nate McMurray, a significant enrollment disadvantage where Republicans outnumber Democrats in this one of the reddest districts in all of New York State. Wasn't supposed to be close, of course, until the indictment of Chris Collins on securities trading charges, insider trading. At the same time, you could say overcoming was something Chris Collins had to do too. He had to overcome that indictment hanging around his neck. And if he could convince enough of the GOP stalwart to still support him. So we'll be here tonight. Nate McMurray expected probably within an hour, and we'll report to you when he gets here. We'll go back inside to you, Scott and Mary Alice.
You got it. Dave McKinley reporting for us tonight. Dave, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We'll be on Channel 2 in just a few minutes, and then we'll be back.
Well, the polls, of course, are now closed here across New York State. If you have been watching us live since 9 o'clock on Facebook Live and our website, welcome back. If you are watching national coverage here on Channel 2 and NBC Now, we will be with you for the next 4 minutes.
Polls just closed down in the last half hour across New York State, and early numbers have still yet to come down. Now, you can see any results for all races scrolling right there on the bottom of your screen as well. But despite no precincts reporting, NBC has already projected Governor Andrew Cuomo to hold off Republican challenger Mark Molinaro. There are also third-party candidates Howie Hawkins, Larry Sharp, and Stephanie Miner.
Now, another race already with a projected winner is for U.S. Senate here in New York State. NBC News has already projected Kirsten Gillibrand will retain her seat over Shelley Farley.
Another race with statewide importance is the Attorney General race between Buffalo attorney Keith Wofford on the Republican side and New York City lawyer Letitia James on the Democratic side. Now, that race also has 3 third-party candidates: Nancy Silwa, Christopher Garvey, and Michael Sussman. And right now we can see, again, we still have the results from the Kirsten Gillibrand and Shelley Farley race. It's showing that it's close, but it has been called for Kirsten Gillibrand already. And locally, we are closely following the results that are coming in for the 27th Congressional District race. Republican Chris Collins is looking to hold off Democratic challenger Nate McMurray after Collins was indicted on federal insider trading charges months ago. Third-party candidate Larry Piazga is in the running as well. And right now, here's where it stands. Of course, we've got McMurray, Collins, and Piazga, but no results yet to show you.
They will be coming in shortly, and we will have them for you as well. But right now, this is a live look over election night parties for both Republicans and the Democrats tonight. On the left is the Democratic Party at the Larkin Building in Buffalo.
On the right is the Republican election night gathering going on at the Avant, and we will be checking in with Kelly Dudzik and Ron Plants at those 2 locations throughout the night on our ongoing Facebook Live coverage and on 2 on Your Side at 10 on Fox and here on Channel 2 News at 11. And while many numbers have still not come in, we did get a closer look at the gubernatorial race through exit polls that were just released this hour.
Very interesting stuff. 2 on Your Side's Michael Wooten joins us now with a closer look at those numbers. Michael, we learned a lot, right?
Yeah, hey, Scott and Mary Alice. Because the governor's race has already been called, I guess it's less interesting to find out about Cuomo versus Molinaro. But this exit polling really tells us a lot about New Yorkers in general. This is the first question I want to show you. It is, what is the most important issue facing the country? It's the little numbers right here. Healthcare, 39%, by far the top issue according to New Yorkers, followed by the economy at 29%, gun policy 17%, and 11% immigration. Now, of these, those who said healthcare is the most important issue, overwhelmingly going for the governor. Exit pollsters also asked New York voters today how they feel about President Trump. He gets 40% approve, 59% disapprove. And then look at that. Among those who disapprove, the vast majority of them, no surprise, going for Governor Cuomo. And the final question here, this one was pretty interesting. Voters were asked, do you support removing President Trump from office, impeaching him? Of that, 52% yes, 43% no. Just a few of the many questions that were part of this exit poll. You can find this. I'll be tweeting out a link to it on my Twitter page, guys.
Gives interesting insight. Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate it, Michael. And our coverage continues on WGRZ.com and, of course, on Facebook Live as well. But on Channel 2, we are now going to return you to NBC's National Election.
Welcome back to our election webcast on decision night in Western New York and America. It's been a busy night here with big turnouts and the polls closing just about a half hour ago all across the state.
We're going to be checking in with a lot of our reporters around the area and analysts here in the studio as well. But first, a check of the races that we are following for you tonight.
First, we had the first big call of the night. The governor's race ended up not being much of a nail-biter in the end. NBC News called Governor Cuomo as the winner pretty much as soon as the polls closed, beating Republican Mark Molinaro to easily win his third term as governor. And also, no surprise, Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand will serve another term as New York State Senator after beating Republican Shelley Farley.
Still no winner in the contest between Republican Chris Collins and Democrat challenger Nate McMurray, a race that got a whole lot closer after Collins' arrest and indictment a few months ago. We're going to be following the results very closely for you, when we should be getting some returns shortly.
Now, we don't know where Congressman Collins is tonight, but we do know where he was earlier this evening.
When our reporter Dave McKinley was reporting from Collins' polling place in Clarence, that's when the congressman and his wife there arrived to cast his vote, something that most campaigns put out ahead of time. But afterward, he spoke with reporters who were there. Here's his full interview.
Congressman came out to vote today. A little late in the afternoon. What have you been up to today?
Well, at least I can vote for myself. That's something my opponent can't do. So was traveling around the district, meeting some of the people, thanking the folks at the different polls. I was out in Niagara County, Genesee County, Wyoming County, and kind of not doing too much else.
Did you hear from people that said to you, Congressman Collins, as much as I understand how it may be to me to keep the seat Republican, and that has been your message,
right,
because of what you face, did you ever hear anyone saying, I just can't vote for you?
Nope, did not. Just the opposite. It started back in early September, people asking me to make sure I ran, saying that they are supporting me with enthusiasm, and as we've gone to one event after another, the response has been overwhelming and positive. And I'm sure there's a few Nate McMurray supporters, but they're not good Republicans. So.
But no, not even good Republicans. Any of them said, dang
one.
it, Chris, I just can't bring myself to vote for you.
Not one single one. That's why we have a lot of confidence tonight. You always have to be cautiously optimistic. What I'm hearing is a great turnout, and with a Republican overlay, and I can see the polls. You know, just to remind you all of one thing, there are more Democrats supporting me than there are Republicans supporting Nate McMurray. I think, did you hear that?
Yes, absolutely. Congressman,
so maybe you should ask Nate McMurray why so many Democrats are not supporting him.
Congressman, do you have any regrets on your decision to stay in the race?
Oh, no. This was the right thing to do. You know, we do have to keep this seat Republican. There's a lot at stake here. We've already heard what Hillary Clinton's going to do, subpoena our president's tax records, go after his businesses. Jerry Nadler's already promised impeachment hearings on not only Trump but Kavanaugh. Adam Schiff will start some new Russian investigation. Our hearings will be an inquisition. This country will be more divided than it's ever been with total lockdown gridlock. So my job is to make sure this seat does stay Republican. I'm very glad getting out and about the last 6 or 7 weeks. Tremendous response from people with enthusiasm. And like I say, the fact that more Democrats are supporting me than Republicans are supporting my opponent is a very telling sign that we're cautiously optimistic, but we feel very good about tonight.
Congressman, it's been kind of difficult for us to track you down. No public schedule for what you've been out in the district doing. No schedule today of when you're voting or where you've been. We've made a couple requests for interviews and haven't heard back from you. Why has it been so hard to get in touch with you?
Let's just say the media has not been very friendly to me. Hello, Dave.
And are your constituents?
Hello, Dave.
Here to vote against you.
They can't be friendly to you if you don't talk to us, right?
Oh, no. This has been a very biased media campaign. Here's what it is. I set a strategy. I think you'll see tonight my strategy worked perfectly. It's about winning. As we all know in politics, there's nothing to do the next day if you lose. I've run this to win. And again, I think we've run a flawless campaign. And clearly, the media is not part of my strategy.
If you win, will you be available to the media?
Yes, after I win, we will let you know where we are and be very happy to talk to you.
Did you know that woman? Is she a Republican? Because you just told me you didn't hear from any Republicans who said, dang it, Chris, we just can't vote for you.
No, I could tell she was a Democrat, so I'm not surprised. Nate McMurray has really juiced up his crowd. And, you know, there are a few nasty Democrats who say that. It's, you know, I got a pretty thick skin. I mean, after dealing with you, Dave, for the last few months, I got a really thick skin.
Congressman, do you think your decision to run was fair to the people in this district, considering what might happen in the future?
Well, I was going to run. I mean, the nonsense that the appellate court in New York was going to take me off the ballot was just that. It was nonsense. It's never happened before. And anyone who thinks the appellate court would have drawn a game plan for people to get off the ballot after a primary is kidding themselves. So it became very evident to me that those who initially said, oh, this would be an easy thing to do, not only would it not have been easy, it would have been impossible. So I was going to run, and once that was obvious, we announced we were running. That was about 6-7 weeks ago, whenever it was. And developed a campaign strategy. We've executed it flawlessly. I intend to call you guys later tonight to talk about our victory, and we'll leave it at that.
One more question.
You're going to call us? I mean, where are you going to be? Where can we come see you?
Yeah, we'll be downtown, and we'll let you know where.
That's a big place.
It is. It's 5 minutes
Any
from one
idea
end to the
where?
other.
Will you be with the Republicans?
I will not be at the event.
Why? How come?
Oh, because we have our very small, this has been a close-knit group of us that have run this race, and we're heading out to dinner right now, and I'd like to leave it at that.
Congressman, one last question. Will you serve on committees if you're elected?
That'll be a discussion for after I get back, and we'll see how that plays out.
Will you serve your term if you're elected?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's no two ways about it.
There you have it. A somewhat subdued but confident Congressman Chris Collins talking about his chances. He feels that he's going to pull off the win tonight.
Interesting, the media was not part of his strategy. However, if he does win, we are part of his strategy. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens.
It'll be a different strategy going forward, I'm sure.
Right now, we're going to check in with Michael Wooten. He is in our newsroom tonight, and numbers coming in from all across the state. Right, Michael?
Yeah, hey, Scott and Mary Alice. You know, we fact-checked truth tested, if you will, Chris Collins' ads during the campaign. I know in speaking with folks on his campaign, they weren't happy about that. They didn't like us pointing out that several of his ads were misleading, in a couple of cases downright false. He kind of attacked Dave McKinley there just because Dave went and tracked down the congressman and asked a couple of very fair questions. So I'm just kind of glad we don't have to fact check the 5-minute news conference or Q&A that the congressman had right there. We don't have any numbers really to show you right now for that House race. It is still very early in the night. What we're looking at here is the map statewide as far as the governor's race goes. Again, Andrew Cuomo has already been declared the winner here. Not a lot of vote in statewide. If you look right here, this is a county kind of north of the Syracuse area. That's shaded in red because that means that Mark Molinaro is winning that county. Other than that, all the vote right now statewide, you have to look very closely, so follow with me. Right down here in New York City, very blue, that's where Andrew Cuomo is doing well. And then Staten Island, if you can see, is colored in red there. But for the most part, the whole state is still gray. That's because we don't have a lot of vote in right now. And what is in is down in New York City. But Andrew Cuomo with 76% of the vote that's in right now, Molinaro with 20% of the vote. Again, most of it down in New York City. That explains why. Kind of a similar picture if we switch over here. This is the U.S. Senate race. Kirsten Gillibrand, again, already declared the winner. She's up almost 80% compared to 20% for her Republican competition there. So we're going to wait for more numbers to come in. Especially we want to see kind of the county by county numbers in the 27th district. Chris Collins, Nate McMurray. We'll see how long into the night it goes before we can project a winner in that race, guys.
And Mark Molinaro winning one upstate county, nowhere near his home county. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, and most of that's just because the upstate vote's not in yet. It's always very interesting to see the county by county breakdown because oftentimes it may kind of look a lot like the presidential county map did 2 years ago. The vast majority of the country was colored in red for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton would have little pockets of blue around the country. Oftentimes that's how the map looks like in New York State. A lot of the upstate counties are all going to be in red, but where the people live, Erie County, down in New York City, sometimes Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, those will tend to be more Democratic areas. But it's going to be interesting to see the county by county breakdown. What will happen in Erie County? Right. We know that Andrew Cuomo is going to win the state. Will Mark Molinaro challenge him here in Erie County as far as the numbers? We'll have to wait to see when they come in. As of now, no numbers to show you on the map for that.
A lot of people have thought that Molinaro would take Erie County, but we'll continue to see that. And Michael, thank you very much. We do want to take a look at we don't have much in here. It's only 1%. So it's basically not much. But it is interesting, though. This is a very split race. Chris Collins with a slight lead, 50 to 48%. And, you know, it'll be interesting if Piegza actually takes, 5 or 6%. That could be the 5 or 6% that could have put Nate McMurray over the victorious line if Larry was not in this race. But as of today, he is.
It'll be interesting to see if it ends up being that close. And we have a couple folks in studio who can give us some insight on that. Our Steve Brown is talking with Carl Calabrese and Bruce Fisher. So what do you say, guys? Well, you think it'll be close or not so much?
Let's fact check one thing right off the top of what Chris Collins said. He said the media wasn't part of his strategy. I'm certain he meant the news media was not part of his strategy because he ran lots of television ads in this particular area. So there was a media strategy, but I'm pretty sure he meant news media. And on that point, we concede. But as far as media, no, he was using some. So to the extent, Carl, that this plan, this strategy was perfectly executed by the Collins campaign. Help us understand what it is. What was their strategy to the extent that you know it or can glean it from the actions of the campaign?
Well, I think there are different phases of his strategy. Initially, it was to go negative and to try to define Nate McMurray before Nate McMurray had enough money to define himself. Correct. That was the beginning. And then it kind of morphed into multiple themes and ended with why you should keep the seat Republican. I wish he would have stayed on that theme the entire campaign. Because if the last Siena poll that was taken that showed him only 3 or 4 points ahead, the one number that jumped out at me was the generic question. When you ask people in that district, what party do you want to see control Congress? It was 56-38 Republican. That was his ticket to victory. And I don't think they did it at the end, but I think they should have done it much longer and much more concentrated. That was the message that I think would have helped him build up a lead and a bigger lead than we're seeing so far.
Bruce, thoughts?
I wish that Nate McMurray and every other Democrat would run the 1992 campaign on health care. And, you know, frankly, as the economy, the Obama recovery rolls on and on and on, okay?
I can't help myself on that.
Okay? Listen, I'm quoting for, it would be great if we would have this defining issue that folks would just stick with instead of reaching for this and reaching for that. Look, I used to be a political consultant, and my clients sometimes got depressed and angry with staying on message. They wanted to talk about sunshine and flowers and horse races, and I would say, no, we're going to talk about health care. And we'd win when we'd focus on stuff that matters to folks.
But wallets matter to folks, and generally speaking, I mean, and there's a lot of credit that could go around in New York State and in New York 27.
And wallets aren't growing in that congressional district except in Amherst. And that is something that Nate McMurray didn't talk about, and that, frankly, the incumbent got away with not talking about.
If you're invested in the stock market, if you have a 401k, the last couple of years,
median household income
have been
there
pretty
is
good.
low. Median household income low is $10,000 lower than it is in Erie County. It is a crying shame that we're not talking about the left behind towns, the formerly industrial towns of upstate New York, of the broad center of New York, between Buffalo and the Hudson River. This is it's a disaster, but you know, what Trump has so effectively done and what Republicans have so effectively done is they've touched on, identified the anxieties of folks in those districts and helped them to believe that Trump and his team are a part of the solution. In my view, they're not.
But part of those anxieties, Carl, is that the recovery from the Great Recession of 2009 has lagged in upstate New York. That was with a Democratic White House and with a Republican White House, but always with Democrats in the governor's mansion. So
that is correct.
They get to point, do they not, at the state Democratic administration say, hey, where's ours? We would like what the rest of the country has. How come we don't have it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of economic policy is determined at the state level. I mean, you get to federal taxes and regulations, but there's an awful lot of things a state can do to encourage economic growth or discourage it. And this state has been the leader in discouraging economic growth going back 50, 60 years. I mean, that's why we've lost more congressional seats after the census than any other state in the country over the last 40, 50 years. There's a reason for that. People go where the jobs are, and that's happened under Republican and Democrat alike. And as long as we continue along this, government can spend its way out of the hard economic times. We're going to continue to drive jobs, capital, investment out of New York State.
Bruce, you're shaking your head over there. Is it just the weather? Is it just our tough winters sometimes? They're driving people to Florida.
I'm gonna put my professor hat on for a second
please.
here. Look,
here we go.
Oh no!
Now, if you've all got about 2 hours, let me explain it to you.
That's the short version. That's the abbreviated version. The 2 hours.
Listen,
political messaging has to be a little tighter.
This, as we well know, it's got to be a soundbite. And look, the Rust Belt, nowhere in the Rust Belt, especially in the places where Donald Trump did well, as you will see in a forthcoming report by some guy I know, namely me, will you see the numbers turning around. It's not turning around in Cleveland. It's not turning around in Indiana. It's not turning around in Wisconsin. I mean, this is a structural problem that was a long time in the making. And you know what? Bravo to Governor Cuomo for trying to make it happen in Buffalo.
But all across the state, but it's all concentrated down.
It's actually happening here too. It's actually job growth has happened.
The greatest amount of job growth has been down.
But that's where all the people are.
And to be honest with you, and I don't say this often as an upstater, a native upstater, but thank goodness it's going well downstate.
Because they're paying our bills.
You know, it could be worse up here.
The other
They're
day,
paying our bills.
This was beautiful. The other day, the Buffalo News comes. There's a front page opinion piece about how all of the things Trump has done wrong, and how there's no economic recovery, and wages aren't growing, and only the rich got the tax cut. All the usual bromides and talking points of the left. And then you open up the section open up the paper to the business section, and there's a great big picture of a couple of guys in hard hats pounding nails into the roof of a new house that they're building. Headline screams, "Wage growth fastest and strongest in decade." And I kind of laughed and I said, you know, I can't wait to see my friends at the Buffalo News, because they're going to bring that newspaper and say, here's what your columnist said on page 1, and here's what the business news reported on page 6.
They shouldn't be putting columns on page 1, by the way. Only my column on page 1. That would be good.
But why is it that, and I got to ask you this question, if things are going pretty well upstate, okay, not perhaps as well as the rest of the country, if things are going pretty well, Bruce, why is it that the governor cannot cash in on that with some form of political popularity? Because if he is unpopular, it is right up here.
You know what? Tell me a Democratic governor who's going to do well in downstate Illinois, which is just like New York. There's Chicago, and then there's the rest of the state. In New York, there's New York City and the rest of the state. It's an amazing phenomenon. It's like, what have you done for me lately? You know, he goes to Rochester, he goes to Syracuse, he goes to Buffalo, he goes to Olean, he goes to Jamestown, puts unprecedented amounts of money and programs and projects in, and people are still standing there saying, well, wait a minute, we're still not as rich as Westchester. You know, it's just, you can do no right. Even George Pataki had that same problem. He had that same problem.
I don't think that people necessarily aspire to Westchester, not that there's anything wrong with Westchester. But
I'll give you a 2-word answer on one of the reasons he's very unpopular in upstate New York.
Go.
SAFE Act. Believe me, the folks in upstate New York, rural folks who are strong Second Amendment people, after that SAFE Act, they wrote them off.
You can find those signs in my home county.
Absolutely.
You can find those signs everywhere.
I've been a hunter all my life. I've owned guns since the age of 14. I've never needed more than 3 shots in my magazine. I didn't really understand the SAFE Act campaign at first, but Carl's right. You go outside of the city limits.
Here.
Huh? I mean,
say that again. Carl would like to hear.
Let me just say this one more time. Okay. Blind squirrel, acorn every once in a while. Okay, it is a cultural thing. You can't go.
But
there's nothing that he can do.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that he can do. You know, I'm just saying. I'm from Angola. Okay, the place that invented air conditioning, which made the South happen. Okay, why do people go south now? Because it's warmer.
Because there's air conditioning inside.
Exactly. Before they didn't go there. Believe me, I have the numbers. You got some time?
Unfortunately, we don't at this particular point in time. Thank you very much, Scott and Mary Ellis. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Carl. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Steve, very much. And we're going to hear now from someone from NBC, right?
That's right. We spoke with their political director, Mark Murray, a little bit earlier tonight and asked him to give some insight on the McMurray and the Collins race. Here's what he had to say.
NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray joins us now. Mark, let me ask you first and foremost, what is the feeling in Washington about the race here in Western New York?
Well, it is a potential but very unlikely pickup for Democrats. The way that many people in Washington are viewing your contest is if somehow Democrats end up picking up, this is the wave of all waves. And of course, one of the reasons why it's so competitive has to do with the ethics and legal challenges from Congressman Collins. But if Democrats are somehow able to pick this off, that means that they ended up winning in New York 19, New York 22, and also, of course, in your Buffalo district. And why this is so tough for Democrats is, as you know very well, this is the most conservative Republican-leaning district in the entire state of New York. But there is the possibility, and the big reason why you end up having not only the ethics issues, but you have Congressman Collins getting outspent. And if there is a really big wave, this could be very exciting tonight.
That's right, Mark. We have seen a lot of national money coming here, especially on the Democratic side in areas where they're trying to flip Republican areas to Democrat. How is that comparing to other parts of the country?
Well, you are getting some money. There is a tremendous amount of money elsewhere. But what I will say is there are two forces at play. The overwhelming Republican-leaning part of the New York 27 congressional district versus, as you mentioned, the money, the potential enthusiasm that you're seeing from Democrats. And whatever force actually is more powerful could very well end up deciding your contest tonight.
All right, and Mark, thank you very much. We have a lot more to ask you. We're running out of time. We'll have to wait and see when the ballots are all counted tonight. NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, thanks for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and stay with us because our webcast is going to continue in about 2 minutes at 9:56, and then we're going to see you over on Fox at 10 o'clock for the regular Fox show. So we'll see you then. Well, it has now been nearly an hour since the polls closed here in New York State, and we are finally getting some numbers that are rolling in.
You can see the results as they come in right at the bottom of your screen, but we do have some projected winners already. NBC News has called Governor Andrew Cuomo the winner in his race against Republican challenger Mark Molinaro.
And Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is also projected to win her bid for re-election to the U.S. Senate. Numbers are still coming in for both races, but again, NBC News has already declared winners in both of those races.
And here is a live look at the biggest local race here in Western New York that is being followed, of course, nationwide. That's between Democrat Nate McMurray and Republican Congressman Chris Collins in the 27th District.
And you can see Chris Collins had 50% to 48% for McMurray.
Well, all night long, we've been talking about how high the voter turnout has been so far, and both parties seem to be enjoying those numbers.
Now, in the past hour, we got to hear from Erie County Republican Chairman Nick Langworthy about how he's been blown away by the turnout.
I feel very good about the turnout. We've seen large numbers really everywhere. I mean, these numbers blow 2014 out of the water, the last gubernatorial election. I think they'll exceed 2010, which was the year that Carl Palladino was our nominee. We had a hometown candidate here. So, I mean, I'm seeing some election districts in key areas, good Republican areas, that are exceeding 70% turnout. It's wild. No one called this. No one anticipated this. And, you know, I chalk it up to a few things. I mean, one, everything has changed since the 2016 presidential election. And there are more Americans, there are more New Yorkers engaged in the process than ever before. People are following politics not just at election time, it's year-round. And you know, largely due to all of your stations and media outlets, it is a full-time part of the American life. And I think that more and more people are exercising their right to vote. I think that's very good, you know, for democracy. We're seeing record votes cast all over the country tonight. In a midterm election, this turnout's just wild.
So let's talk about that wild turnout. We're joined by our political analysts, Carl Calabrese and Bruce Fisher. What's behind all of this? It's way higher than I think anybody projected. Oh, yeah. So, Carl, what's behind it in your opinion?
It is much higher. I think you've got to go back to some of the congressional midterms in the 60s with the height of the Vietnam and civil rights protests to get this kind of percentage turnout. What's behind it, again, the country has been on hyperdrive in terms of interest and passion since the election night of 2016.
Is that it, Bruce, that we've reached political volatility that drives people to the polls? Because that's what it was like in the late 60s. Is that what it's like now? Is that the connectivity here?
Trump agitates every day, many times a day. He agitates his base. He agitates people who can't stand him. There's a feeling among Democrats that, my God, we've got to get out there and vote for people who can restore normalcy somehow.
That turmoil, that's the thing, right?
Trump.
All right, terrific. That's it for now. We'll be back here at 10:26 for another quick local political update.
Join your side at 10 on Fox. It is election night across the country, and we are tracking all you need to know right here in Western New York. And good evening, I'm Scott Levin.
And I'm Mary Alice Demler. Kelly Dudzik is on assignment tonight. Well, the polls closed about an hour ago, and now we're tracking your results live tonight. We, of course, have team coverage across Western New York. But first, we'll give you a quick look at some of the top races.
First, we had the first big call of the night. That is the governor's race. Ended up not being much of a nail biter in the end. Governor Cuomo is being called as the winner as soon as the polls close, beating Republican Mark Molinaro.
And no surprise, Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand will serve another term as New York State Senator after beating Republican Shel Farley. And right now, this is a look at the Chris Collins-Nate McMurray race with only about, let's see, what is our percentage? 22% of the precincts reporting. It's showing that they're in a dead heat right there at 49%, and then just 2% for third-party candidate Larry P. Egza.
All right, we're going to go now into our newsroom right now, where our Michael Wooten has the very latest on some numbers that are just coming into the information center. Michael, what's the latest?
Yeah, guys, NBC News was able at 9 o'clock, as soon as polls closed, to announce that they had projected Andrew Cuomo had won re-election across the state. But obviously, we're wondering how the vote was here in Western New York. And here are the numbers that we have right now for just Erie County, of course, the most populous county in our region. Shows Andrew Cuomo with 41% of the vote. Mark Molinaro, the Republican, with 55% of the vote. Again, here in Erie County. This is not with all of the vote in, so we'll have to wait until everything is tabulated. This is less than a quarter of the vote in, but early on, it shows you kind of this divide, because we were seeing down in New York City, the governor racking up just huge margins, wondering kind of what the upstate picture is going to look like. How well did Mark Molinaro do in Western New York? At least right now, he's got a 14-point advantage here. I can also tell you that when it comes to the Attorney General's race, the Republican, Keith Wofford, is also up here in Erie County. Across the state, he's losing to Letitia James. But here in Western New York, the Republican winning. And also, I can tell you, as far as just Erie County in the 27th District Congressional Race, it shows Nate McMurray up about 4 points over Chris Collins. Again, these are just Erie County numbers, but just to give you a sense. And of course, this governor's number, very interesting when you compare it to the overall state number, guys. And we're going to continue our team coverage now with Channel 2's Ron Plants. Ron?
GOP headquarters, some of the candidates actually starting to filter in a bit. Just a moment ago, we got to talk to New York State Assembly incumbent Assemblyman Ray Walter about what he was seeing up in that 146th district. That again takes in parts of Niagara and Erie counties in Amherst and what have you. And we asked him what he was seeing in his tight battle with Karen McMahon, the Democrat who was challenging him. And we asked about the Collins effect, the fact that Chris Collins, the congressman, is in part of that district. So here's what Walter had to say about that situation. can't hear.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And we continue tonight's coverage with Two on Your Side's Kelly Dudzik. She joins us live from Erie County Democratic Committee headquarters in Larkin Square. Kelly?
Hi, Scott. We are on the 8th floor of the Larkin Center of Commerce here in Larkinville, where it really has filled up since we last spoke with you right around 9 o'clock this evening. We did hear from some of the winners already, those who are running for judge positions, and Brian Higgins already gave his victory speech here tonight. He was expected to win. The people who are here are watching the results come in from across the country. If Democratic challenger Nate McMurray wins tonight in the 27th district, he could help the Democrats win back the House. And also on the big board behind me, people are watching our local assembly races. I'll, of course, be updating you both here on air and online throughout the evening. Mary Alice, we're going to send it back to you.
All righty. Thank you very much, Kelly. Well, one of the most highly anticipated races in Western New York is, of course, the 27th Congressional District race. Two on Your Side's Dave McKinley has been watching that race closely, and he spoke with Congressman Chris Collins earlier tonight on Channel 2 News. And now Dave joins us live with more on his Democratic challenger, Nate McMurray. Dave?
Here at McMurray headquarters in Hamburg, we haven't seen the candidate yet, but members of his family have arrived there, sitting over there in the far corner. We also got word here that Nate McMurray beat Chris Collins in Monroe County. That's just one of 8 counties in the 27th Congressional District, and it's about, so you might say, well, that's not very significant. However, we can tell you that between those towns, the vote is pretty close to 50-50, so McMurray was at least successful there, and there are several heavy Republican towns in that section of Monroe County represented by the 27th. In the meantime, folks continue to arrive here. They're watching the returns on television. It is really a theme for this could have been overcoming. Who could overcome? Could Nate McMurray overcome that decided disadvantage in voter enrollment? And that was something that was not even supposed to make this race close. What made it close, of course, the indictment of Chris Collins on insider trading charges. And the question for Chris Collins is, can he overcome that? Could he convince enough of the Republicans in this overwhelmingly red district that they should vote for him? Remember, he tried to make this a lot about President Trump and preserving the president and the president's agenda, suggesting that any Democrat elected, including Nate McMurray, would be a vote toward Democrats gaining traction in the House, where Collins, if you were to believe him, says they are poised and ready to start impeachment proceedings and overturn a lot of the Trump initiatives and basically undo the results of the election in 2016. So again, that was how a lot of this campaign played out. And of course, Collins himself, he did a lot of his work through commercials. He made campaign appearances in friendly confines in Republican territory, devoid of any advance notification to the media. So he kind of played it quiet, kind of played it close to the vest, understandably perhaps so because he is under indictment. But McMurray made a lot of that too, saying if he's afraid to face the voters and afraid to face the media, why does he deserve a vote? So, cautious optimism here at the McMurray headquarters in Hamburg, and we await the arrival of Nate McMurray himself, which we are told won't be that long from now, although it could take a while for returns to come in completely from all 8 counties in this 27th district. Reporting live from Hamburg, Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. And we've got some more statewide results coming in. We have just learned that State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli has earned another term as our state comptroller.
All right, but right now, to give us some perspective on today's election, let's check in with Steve Brown with political strategist Carl Calabrese and Bruce Fisher. Guys.
Hey there. Let's talk a little bit about New York 27 because Dave McKinley was just talking about that. And to you, Bruce, if it were not for some of the self-inflicted injuries the Democrats inflicted on themselves in this race. The governor at one point this summer said, Nate McMurray's a nice guy, can't win this race. It needs to be Kathy Hochul, and he couldn't convince her to get into the race. If it was perhaps a dedication to his candidacy, would we be seeing a different outcome today?
I think you might be seeing it tighten up more. Again, the structural disadvantage that the Democrat has there is considerable. I also don't understand why the McMurray campaign didn't do direct mail to each household, as you would ordinarily do in a district where you're kind of crossing media markets. But beside that technical stuff, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but this was a great campaign. It's a great candidacy. He's up against folks who've been voting Republican since the days of General Grant. So it's a very tough place to go, especially now, and I agree with Carl, after the terrible, devastating distraction of the Supreme Court confirmation hearings. You know what? Republicans went home. They got energized and they got focused. I'm not surprised they came out, and I'm not surprised that they stayed on the Republican line.
We have to wrap up pretty quick here. But
I would agree. I was impressed with the McMurray campaign. He had good commercials. He came across very well, well-spoken, gave a good kind of feel to it, but he was swimming upstream. And I think one of the things that struck me was initially, a few weeks ago, the Democratic campaign, the National Campaign Committee, said that this seat, New York 27, was on their list of seats that were going to be funded because it could be flipped. They never gave him a dime.
And they were late to the party.
They never gave him a dime.
And they were late to the party.
It was a ploy. It was a public relations ploy. Had they put a lot of money into this in the last 3 weeks? Who knows?
Who knows? All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Scott and Mary Alice, back to you.
All righty. Thanks very much, Steve, Carl, and Bruce. Now, we, of course, have live coverage of tonight's election on the go on WGRZ.com, as well as our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. And you can also catch the latest results also coming up tonight at 11 o'clock over on Channel 2. But stay with us because 2 on your side at 10 on Fox. We'll be right back. Well, right now, taking a look at some of the other top stories around Western New York tonight, a day after Bishop Richard Malone addressed his priests and the media about sexual abuse allegations in the diocese. Getting reaction from Catholics today has not been easy. We've been trying to find out what the cost was to the diocese for that marathon news conference yesterday and their legal fees in general, given the attorneys who took part. Now, this comes after my one-on-one interview with the bishop Sunday, where I asked if he knows what the diocese has paid those lawyers. The diocese never got back to us tonight.
Well, as Tops Markets continues to deal with bankruptcy, we are finding out more about the supermarket chain's finances tonight. The company filed this monthly operating report in court yesterday. It lists all of the company's debts. And one of the things we found from looking at it is that it shows that the company has spent $22 million on professional fees. I sat down with local bankruptcy attorney Johnny Mueller earlier tonight to talk about that filing, and you can catch that interview on our website at WGRZ.com.
Well, Amazon could be picking the location for its new second headquarters soon, and reports suggest Amazon could split its headquarters between two cities. The Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, reports that Crystal City in Northern Virginia is in final talks. The other cities potentially on the short list include New York and Dallas. Governor Andrew Cuomo says he will do whatever it takes to get the company to come to Long Island.
And something cute to brighten up your night as part of the NFL's Salute to Service campaign. Earlier this evening, the Buffalo Bills joined local military veterans at the SPCA to, of course, have fun with all of the adoptable animals, but also to raise awareness for the shelter as well. The SPCA's Paws and Patriots program connects vets with pets to make sure that both get special love and attention.
We, of course, are continuing election coverage tonight. These are some live looks at the GOP and Democratic headquarters this evening, where we are awaiting results. You can see those results in real time on our website and on social media, and tonight at 11 over on Channel 2. We'll be right back.
Well, it was a windy evening. The winds will keep up through tonight. Then we've got a couple of chances for snow to talk about this weekend and early next week. Join me in a few minutes for the full forecast. My forecast, or are you using it as a lead-in?
Well, if you have been outside today, you know it has been a very windy day out there. Those winds have been powerful enough to take out trees and streetlights and cause an awful lot of other damage around western New York tonight. If you can safely share them with us, be sure to send your photos and videos from tonight's storm on social media using the hashtag #BeOn2.
Well, here in downtown Buffalo, where we have some vulnerable infrastructure, we even had an incident out in front of our station. These winds are strong.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we're talking about when we say be mindful when you're driving, when you're walking.
That's right. Tree branches.
Especially at night, because it's just so much harder to see it. And unfortunately, through tonight into tomorrow, the wind not going to let up. Well, let's get to the 5-day forecast, because the temperatures are not going to be going up anytime soon either. If anything, over the next couple of days, they're headed down, and they will stay in the 30s this weekend into next week, where we've got not just one, not two, but perhaps 3 chances for some snow. 2 of those chances coming as lake effect within the next week or so. So without further ado, there's a lot to get to. Let's look at the strongest wind gusts so far tonight. 52 miles per hour at Niagara Falls. Anywhere from 45 to 47 miles per hour across parts of Erie County down through Chautauqua County. No surprise where the strongest wind gusts are. That's where we have most of the damage reports. These coming in from the National Weather Service office in Buffalo. Most of these are down trees and power lines. A reminder again, if you can safely get pictures or video, tweet them to us using hashtag #BeOn2 or post them on our Facebook page. We do still have high wind warnings for Niagara, Erie, and Chautauqua County. That goes until 6 a.m. Wind advisories as you go a little bit farther east. All that means is that the winds are going to be a little bit stronger along the lake compared to a little bit farther inland. Either way, though, gusts 50 to 60 miles per hour through tonight. letting up a little bit tomorrow, but really not all that much. And it's all because of this area of low pressure off to our north. It's strengthened very quickly, and it is instigating a few showers around the area. Not quite to the magnitude of what we saw earlier today. Really good burst of rain right around midday, right? Mainly light showers tonight into tomorrow. Temperatures will stay in the mid-40s. They will drop a couple degrees as we go into our Wednesday. But check out the winds. They're staying out of the southwest, and even through tomorrow morning, still sustained anywhere from 20 to 25 miles per hour right along the lake. You notice a little bit weaker into the interior part of the southern tier. Temperatures tomorrow in the 40s. That's after being in the 60s today. You'll notice that difference for sure. Later on tomorrow night, it may get cold enough that we see a little bit of snow starting to mix in, but that's not the snow chance that I'm concerned about. Here's future look for tomorrow. Notice the lake effect rain bands. They try to get organized, but they don't stay in any one place for too long. I would keep the umbrella with you no matter where you're going, just in case, but be ready to hang on to it pretty tight. The winds are going to be pretty strong as we go through Wednesday, but weakening Thursday. Temperatures stuck in the mid-40s through the afternoon. Average high right now, right about 50 degrees, so still a little bit below normal. Let's jump ahead to the end of this week. Thursday is very quiet, but Friday, we may start off with some slushy snow accumulations in the higher elevations before everybody changes to rain Friday afternoon. Then Friday night into Saturday, here comes the colder air, here comes the westerly wind. Chance for some accumulating snowfall Friday night into Saturday. Still too far out for specifics yet, but you might need the shovels in parts of the southern tier in northern Pennsylvania. Here's this first wave. It's certainly bringing some chilly air for the weekend, but it's the second wave, middle of next week, that I'm a little bit more interested in because the cold air is already going to be there. This storm may be a little bit stronger. So while this weekend's lake effect event pretty quick, next week we could be looking at a couple of days of some breezy, cold, possibly snowy conditions. We're back with more 2 on Your Side at 10 on Fox in just a bit.
Test 1 2, test 1 2. Hi there. Well, so much of the focus continues to be on the Bills and their struggling offense. What a story. The UB Bulls continue to be incredibly explosive on that side of the ball, able to play terrific defense as well. We're seeing both tonight. Well on their way to extending their record to 9-1 on the season. Final home game of the year against Kent State over at Amherst. Some highlights in Lance Leipold and company, dominant in this one against the Golden Flashes. Ground game, a huge part of the story tonight. Look at Jarrett Patterson, an incredible night for him early in the first quarter. That is a 64-yard touchdown run for Patterson, and the Bulls were just getting started second quarter. Here's Kevin Marks, 5 yards for the TD. Ground game, a big part of this story tonight, puts them up 27-0. And before the end of the half, it's Patterson again for his second TD of the game. And the Bulls, 48-7 in front in the fourth quarter. College hoops, UB opening its season this afternoon at home against St. Francis. Great expectations for Nate Oates and his team this year. Off to a good start, though. A bit of a tight game early. Javon Graves driving 2 of his 12. Bulls up 42-34 at the half. C.J. Massenberg, 11 points and 8 rebounds. And Nick Perkins leading the way for UB, 16 points, 9 boards. They open a 20-point lead with just over 3 minutes left. They win it 82-67. Bills, in the meantime, making a roster move today. They have released cornerback Phillip Gaines. He's had a tough time during the 4-game losing streak with a number of pass interference penalties. They have promoted Levi Wallace, cornerback, off of the practice squad to fill that roster spot. And the Bills, in the meantime, set to get back on the field tomorrow to get ready for the matchup with the Jets on Sunday down at East Rutherford. Biggest question heading into that game, will Josh Allen return to action? He sprained his elbow back in Week 6. Against the Texans, been out of the lineup since, and with the Bills 2-7, the rookie's development is really the biggest storyline looking toward the rest of the season. He is listed as day-to-day, and we should know more about his status as the Bills hit the practice field tomorrow. We'll see if he's with them actually taking part in practice. He's tried to simulate that workload in the workouts that he has done throwing the football. That will do it for us here at 10 o'clock. Our election coverage continues both at WGRZ.com, and you'll see full coverage at 11 on Channel 2 as well. Thanks for being with us.
Bulls are going to win, huh? Huh?
Scott, do a mic check.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 testing. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2.
Testing 1 2.
Testing 1 2.
Hang on, I was just changing
Amy is changing the battery.
So, okay. Where did you have it attached to? I don't even know.
Check 1 2 1 2.
Welcome back to our local coverage of election night here in Western New York. Polls statewide closed about an hour and a half ago, and several races are becoming more clear now.
But one that is still too early to call right now, of course, is the big 27th congressional race. Right now, Congressman Chris Collins is holding a lead over Democratic challenger Nate McMurray, as you see here, 51 to 47%. But votes are still coming in this race, so it is still too early to officially call a winner. Again, this is with 31% of the precincts reporting. I needed my glasses. Thank you
It's all right.
for that.
I'm looking out for you there,
Yes.
Scott. Well, there are a few races of the state that have projected winners, starting with the top office of governor. NBC News projects Andrew Cuomo to hold on to the office, hiccup, over Republican candidate Mark Molinaro.
And NBC News also projects U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is going to hold on to her seat. That is over Republican Shelley Farley.
And one more to add this half hour. Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli has declared himself the winner in his re-election campaign. NBC News had not officially called that race just yet, though, but DiNapoli himself is declaring victory. He's a comptroller. He's used to counting.
He's in control.
He's decided he's going to take it into his own hands.
Right now, though, let's get back to that race in the 27th Congressional District. Congressman Chris Collins is holding on to a slim lead now over Democratic opponent Nate McMurray, but the district is much closer than in recent election years.
Well, let's send it over to Two on Your Side's Michael Wooten. He is taking a closer look at those numbers coming in. Michael, how does it look?
Guys, we just got a lot of new numbers, and there are a lot of numbers on this screen. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through each of them carefully, but I can tell you, besides what you just showed, a lot more of the vote has come in. It's now about 65,000 votes for Collins, 61,000 for McMurray. So very close. Here's the county by county breakdown as we have it right now. And I want to start in Erie County. I'm going to draw your attention right here. Chris Collins, 17,000 votes. Nate McMurray, 19,000. So McMurray with a slight edge in Erie County. This is with about a third of the vote in right now. So there's still a lot of vote to count in Erie County. So presumably if McMurray keeps up this margin, he could add to his total there. The difference right now is about 4,000 votes with Collins on top. All the rest of these numbers are those counties in full. So Niagara County, very close. Chris Collins with a very slim lead over Nate McMurray there. Again, all the vote counted in Niagara County as far as the 27th district goes, so very close there. Orleans County, a pretty good margin there, 58 to 36, Chris Collins, but this is not very populous, and so we're just talking about a few thousand votes there. Genesee County, another good margin for Chris Collins, 54% to 40%, but again, we're just talking about 3,000 votes there. Finally, we get over to Monroe County, where it's very close, 47-48. Only a sliver of this district falls in Monroe County. So the story right now, still waiting for the vote in Ontario, Livingston, and Wyoming counties. Just a few votes in there, nothing to put on the board here yet. We're still waiting for the rest of Erie County, 2/3 of the vote to come in there. Can Nate McMurray drive up a margin there enough to win over 4,000 more votes than Chris Collins? Guys, this is very close. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 30-40 minutes.
And we know you will be on top of it. Michael Wooten in the Information Center. As always, Michael, thank you.
It is really fascinating to see those actual numbers come in a little at a time. It's what a lot of people predicted, that we really won't know until the end of the night who that eventual winner is going to be.
That's right. Well, stay with us because that's going to do it for our special local coverage right now. Until we see you again tonight on Channel 2 at 11. We will continue, however, our coverage on Facebook and on our website. We'll see you then.
Welcome back, everybody, to our election webcast on decision night in Western New York and America. It's been about an hour and a half since the polls closed here in New York State, and there are still a lot of numbers left to come in.
And we are watching those numbers come in right now, and we have some of the races to check on for you tonight.
First, here is the latest from the 27th Congressional District, where Chris Collins is facing a challenge from Democrat Nate McMurray.
As you see here, with 31% of the precincts reporting, Chris Collins is 51%, Nate McMurray at 47%, and Piegza at 2% right now. Well, there wasn't much tension after all in the governor's race. It was an immediate call for NBC for Governor Cuomo. He just gave a victory speech downstate to celebrate his win for a third term as governor.
Another one that we're still waiting on tonight, the race for Attorney General. Democrat Letitia James and Republican Keith Wofford of Buffalo are in the running tonight, and right now with 39% of the precincts reporting, James is ahead 70% to 28%.
And no surprise here, Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand will serve yet another term as New York State Senator, New York U.S. Senator it is. After beating Republican Shelley Farley.
And another contest that may be over here, State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli has declared victory in his bid for another term, though it's not a race that has been officially called yet. We'll let you know when that one comes in. Well, our Michael Wooten has been following the numbers in this race, the breakdown all across the state.
And let's check in with Michael right now. Michael, what's the latest?
Hey, Scott, Mary Alice, we want to focus in again on the 27th district. This is going to be a nail biter. There are a lot of numbers on the screen. So, Scott, Mary Alice, if you notice something and have questions at the end, please feel free to ask. But I'm going to kind of go through these right now. Amy, if we start down here at the bottom of the screen, these are the total numbers, the latest ones that we have for the entire 27th district. Chris Collins, 65,800 votes. Nate McMurray, 61,641. So a difference of about 4,159 votes. Hopefully my math is right there. Now let's go county by county and try to fill in the picture here. We'll start in Erie County. This is the most populous in the district. It is 47% Collins, 51% McMurray. This is with about a third of the vote in right now. We expect a lot more of that vote is going to come in shortly. And so it would stand to reason if Nate McMurray keeps up this margin, if he's winning by about 4 percentage points, he's going to rake up several thousand more votes as far as the lead. Is it enough to make up the difference here? Absolutely. But you also have some other counties that still have to come in. Let's do another whip around the region. Niagara County, all the vote is in. These are final numbers. 48% Collins, 47% McMurray. Very close in Niagara County, which is oftentimes seen as a Republican county. And so Nate McMurray perhaps overperforming in Niagara County. Orleans and Genesee, these are both also full 100% of the vote is in. Chris Collins doing pretty well in both of those as expected. 58-36 the margin in Orleans County and Genesee County. Chris Collins winning by about 14 percentage points. One other bit of numbers we have here out in Monroe County, very, very close there. What is still outstanding? We mentioned only a third of the vote is in Erie County, so we got to wait for 2/3 more vote to come in there. That's tens of thousands of votes. Also, we have Ontario, Livingston, and Wyoming counties. So you have a couple of dueling kind of theories here. Can Nate McMurray rack up enough votes in Erie County where he's winning, or Chris Collins can bring in some votes in more traditionally Republican areas to match up with that? It's a 4,000 vote difference right now. As we again look at the totals here, we expect a lot more of this vote to come in over the next 15, 20 minutes. So we're going to continually update this, but very, very close right now. Certainly too close to call. Hope we explain those county by counties, guys. I know there are a lot of numbers on here. This is going to be a nail biter.
Michael, the important thing, though, is where the big numbers are is Erie County. That's where McMurray can make up the biggest deficit there. And there's still only a third of that in, like you said. So that could easily be overcome, his little deficit right now.
Here's the other thing that might worry the Chris Collins campaign. And I'd be interested to hear what our analysts have to say about this as well. But if we look at Ontario County, again, I have no numbers on here because very little of the vote is in right now. But the margin there is very interesting. Nate McMurray is up 64-31 in the Ontario County portion of our region. So Nate McMurray may also rack up some votes here on the eastern edge of the district. But again, we expect Collins to do very well in Wyoming and Livingston counties. So can McMurray do well enough in Erie and Ontario counties to make up the difference, or can Chris Collins add to his lead in Livingston and Wyoming counties? Those are the things we're going to be watching over the next half hour.
Yeah, it's turned into a really interesting night. We'll check in soon. Thank you, Michael. Well, let's head out now to find out what the mood is at Erie County Democratic election night headquarters in Larkinville.
Kelly Dudzik is there. She is in Larkinville for us. And Kelly, what's the mood there?
Well, Scott and Mary Alice, we've already heard from several winners tonight, including Congressman Brian Higgins, who easily won re-election. But people are very closely watching that 27th district race, hoping here that Nate McMurray can pull out that win. Of course, he has a separate party going on in Hamburg, where our Dave McKinley is tonight. We also just heard from Assemblyman Sean Ryan, who won his re-election bid this evening. No speeches from any of the losers yet, because those are all races that we're still waiting on to be called. But I can tell you that I was at this same party 2 years ago, the night that Donald Trump won the presidency. At this point in the evening, and as we got closer to 11 o'clock at night, it really became a ghost town. This year, definitely much more of a party atmosphere. Live in Larkinville tonight, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, distinctly different this time around.
Sure is. All right, let's check in now with our Dave McKinley. He is down in Hamburg, right?
That's right. He's at the Nate McMurray headquarters, election night headquarters. They're hoping for a big party there. Seems like there's a good number of folks there too, Dave.
Well, this storefront has actually served as his main campaign headquarters throughout this campaign, which started most people not giving him much of a chance. Of course, what changed that was the indictment of Chris Collins, the incumbent, on insider trading charges. And of course, that spurred a lot of interest in this race nationally as well. We have not seen the candidate here tonight. His family is over in the corner, though. They're awaiting the results like everyone else. About the biggest cheer that went up here so far was when the folks here watching the television learned that it appeared that the Democrats will take over the House. I did speak with Niagara Falls Mayor Paul Dyster. He's standing right here, in fact, behind me. He wished not to go on camera, but we talked a little bit about McMurray's performance in Niagara County. Now, Collins won in Niagara County, but not by the margin he would normally be expected to win by against the Democrat. That means, to him at least, that Nate McMurray performed well. He thinks he's performing well in Erie County, unsure whether he's performing well enough, though, to give him the votes he needs. And of course, Orleans County went for Chris Collins. That was expected. But again, you're talking about Orleans, Genesee, Wyoming. These are counties. They are very, very red. You would expect Collins to win them, but there isn't a great deal of population out there. So it depends how well the Democrats. It depends on how well the Democrats did in getting the vote out in more populous counties. So we may be here for a while because it may take a while for all the results to come in from outlying areas, as you heard Michael Wooten tell you just a short time ago. So we'll wrap it up live for now at the Nate McMurray campaign headquarters in Hamburg.
All righty. Thanks very much, Dave. Well, you know, we don't know exactly where Congressman Chris Collins is tonight, but we do know where he was a little bit earlier in the evening.
And earlier in their evening, Dave McKinley was reporting from Collins's polling place in Clarence when the congressman arrived with his wife to cast his vote, something most campaigns actually put out ahead of time. They let us know where they're going to be. Afterwards, he spoke with reporters who were there, and here's his full interview.
Congressman came out to vote today. A little late in the afternoon. What have you been up to today?
Well, at least I can vote for myself. That's something my opponent can't do. So was traveling around the district, meeting some of the people, thanking the folks at the different polls. I was out in Niagara County, Genesee County, Wyoming County, and kind of not doing too much else.
Did you hear from people that said to you, Congressman Collins, as much as I understand how it may be to me to keep the seat Republican, and that has been your message, right? Because of what you face, did you ever hear anyone saying, I just can't vote for you?
Nope, did not. Just the opposite. It started back in early September, people asking me to make sure I ran, saying that they are supporting me with enthusiasm, and as we've gone to one event after another, the response has been overwhelming and positive. And I'm sure there's a few Nate McMurray supporters, but they're not good Republicans. So.
But no, not even good Republicans. Any of them said, dang it, Chris, I just can't bring myself to vote for you.
Not one single one. That's why we have a lot of confidence tonight. You always have to be cautiously optimistic. What I'm hearing is a great turnout, and with a Republican overlay And I can see the polls. You know, just to remind you all of one thing, there are more Democrats supporting me than there are Republicans supporting Nate McMurray. I think, did you hear that?
Yes, I'm sorry. Congressman,
so maybe you should ask Nate McMurray why so many Democrats are not supporting him.
Congressman, do you have any regrets on your decision to stay in the race?
Oh, no. This was the right thing to do. You know, we do have to keep this seat Republican. There's a lot at stake here. We've already heard what Hillary Clinton's going to do, subpoena our president's tax records, go after his businesses. Jerry Nadler's already promised impeachment hearings on not only Trump but Kavanaugh. Adam Schiff will start some new Russian investigation. Our hearings will be an inquisition. This country will be more divided than it's ever been with total lockdown gridlock. So my job is to make sure this seat does stay Republican. I'm very glad getting out and about the last 6 or 7 weeks. Tremendous response from people with enthusiasm. And like I say, the fact that more Democrats are supporting me than Republicans are supporting my opponent is a very telling sign that we're cautiously optimistic, but we feel very good about tonight.
Congressman, it's been kind of difficult for us to track you down. No public schedule for what you've been out in the district doing. No schedule today of when you're voting or where you've been. We've made a couple requests for interviews and haven't heard back from you. Why has it been so hard to get in touch with you?
Let's just say the media has not been very friendly to me. Hello, Dave.
And are your constituents?
Hello, Dave.
We're here to vote against you.
They can't be friendly to you if you don't talk to us, right?
Oh, no. This has been a very biased media campaign. Here's what it is. I set a strategy. I think you'll see tonight my strategy worked perfectly. It's about winning. As we all know in politics, there's nothing to do the next day if you lose. I've run this to win. And again, I think we've run a flawless campaign. And clearly, the media is not part of my strategy.
If you win, will you be available to the media?
Yes, after I win, we will let you know where we are and be very happy to talk to you.
Did you know that woman, is she a Republican? Because you just told me you didn't hear from any Republicans who said, dang it, Chris, we just can't vote for you.
No, I could tell she was a Democrat, so I'm not surprised. Nate McMurray has really juiced up his crowd. And, you know, there are a few nasty Democrats who say that. It's, you know, I got a pretty thick skin. I mean, after dealing with you, Dave, for the last few months, I got a really thick skin.
Congressman, do you think your decision to run was fair to the people in this district, considering what might happen in the future?
Well, I was going to run. I mean, the nonsense that the appellate court in New York was going to take me off the ballot was just that. It was nonsense. It's never happened before. And anyone who thinks the appellate court would have drawn a game plan for people to get off the ballot after a primary is kidding themselves. So it became very evident to me that those who initially said, oh, this would be an easy thing to do, not only would it not have been easy, it would have been impossible. So I was going to run, and once that was obvious, we announced we were running. That was about 6-7 weeks ago, whenever it was. And developed a campaign strategy. We've executed it flawlessly. I intend to call you guys later tonight to talk about our victory, and we'll leave it at that.
One more question.
You're going to call us? I mean, where are
Yes.
you going to be? Where can we come see you?
Yeah, we'll be downtown, and we'll let you know where.
That's a big place.
It is. It's 5 minutes
Any
from one end to
idea
the
where?
other.
Will you be with the Republicans?
I will not be at the event.
Why? How come?
Oh, because we have our very small, this has been a close-knit group of us that have run this race, and we're heading out to dinner right now, and I'd like to leave it at that.
Congressman, one last question. Will you
One last question.
Will you serve on committees if you're elected?
That'll be a discussion for after I get back, and we'll see how that plays out.
Will you serve your term if you're elected?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there's no two ways about it.
There you have it. Chris Collins outlining his strategy for this race, and the results are still coming in tonight. We now have 56% of the precincts reporting.
That's right. It is pretty close. You got Chris Collins at 52% to 46%. McMurray, we still got a long way to go right now.
That's right. But we've got some analysis to share with you. Steve Brown is over with Carl Calabrese and Bruce Fisher to give us some insight. Steve?
Scott and Mary Alice, we can tell you that this race is closer than what Michael laid out at the top of this segment, in that Ontario County, which is close to where I grew up, went for Nate McMurray by about 1,000 votes. So that margin that we were talking about earlier, that was about 3,800 votes, is around 2,800 votes, with still votes to count from Livingston County, which is small, rural, likely Republican. Wyoming County, again, small, rural, likely Republican, and about 2/3 of Erie County's vote. Given that, Bruce,
this is going to be very tight. This is going to be a lot tighter than I thought, because remember, Geneseo, Geneseo on Mount Morris, there's a lot of state employees there. There are
a lot of students that could have registered to vote.
Exactly. And Erie County, look, we don't have, we still got 1/3 or 40% of Erie County yet to count.
I think it's more than that.
There's been a lot of indication. Remember those exit poll numbers about the favorability of Cuomo among women, okay? Cuomo's numbers in Erie County, not the sharpest shovel in his shed, but very, very strong. Pat Burke is beating Bolin in very traditional conservative, socially conservative, moderate income households in West Seneca, exactly, Reagan Democrat country. So, you know, this is going to be keeping us awake for a while. This is great.
Carl, should we put on another pot of coffee?
I think we should. Yeah,
okay.
I think this is going to be closer, given the numbers that have come in and have yet to come in, and where they're going to come in from. I think this margin is going to get much closer, and I think we're going to be up late tonight.
Now, obviously, this district cuts out the city of Buffalo, which is the most Democratic part of a Democratic county.
Go figure.
Well, yes, it's an urban center. That's where you usually find Democrats. So we're talking about South towns. We're talking about places like Lancaster, which is traditionally Republican. We're talking about places like Hamburg, which is shown Republican.
Traditionally Republican, if I may correct you.
Sure.
It is a very split. It's a very purple area, Lancaster is. It goes back and forth, okay? So the problems that Collins has had with his own message, the problems that he had. Look, he would have had a problem anyway, because his own House Ethics Committee 2 years in a row did not give him a clean bill of health. This was he had all kinds of warts all over him. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but that was a pretty well-known problem that he had before he was indicted. He's out on bail, folks.
Yeah, but put the word traditional aside. I mean, given the problems Chris Collins has legally now,
right?
If everybody voted traditionally, we wouldn't be talking about staying up late tonight.
No.
And so the problems he's had with the courthouse has negated a lot of that traditional voting, and that's why, as I said, we're going to be up late.
But the Republicans spent so much time. They brought in Steve Bannon to try and, you know, juice things up a little bit.
Yeah, dozens of people show up for his event.
But the message was out there that, you know, this is.
I am an intellectual.
This is the Republican presidency and its effectiveness, and that's at stake. And that's not a bad message.
But it wasn't. But it was too little, too late. That should have been the message right from the beginning. As soon as they saw that poll and that question that was tested about what party do you want to see control Congress, and it was overwhelmingly Republican, that should have been the focus of the campaign. And it wasn't until very late in the campaign. So I think it was too little, too late.
There are a lot of behavioral Democrats in the near-in suburbs, okay, just as there are a lot of behavioral Republicans in cow country. That's what we're looking at here is maybe a lot of Democrats coming home, and I keep coming back to, I want to see those numbers broken out by registration, but also by some other demographic information. Steve Bannon said last year, we've lost educated women. Well, let's see if that's true. He said it. This is Trump's strategist who said this. It wasn't some, you know, Democratic professor. No, it was the big intellectual himself. Right?
So what kind of...
Is my head pointed? I don't think so.
Not at all.
Only to what degree?
Both of our heads are a little shinier than they used to be.
That's for sure.
But wouldn't that mean that, you know, the South towns, which are traditionally more Republican, I mean, if these folks show up, then they can help blunt this, right?
They can, but they're going to have to show up, and they're going to have to to vote the way they have traditionally voted. And we've seen from the other counties that although he has won many of them, the margins aren't what they should be in what would be a normal year for Chris Collins in his district.
To me, the crossover, they're not voting for Mickey Kearns either, which is very interesting. A candidate we've never heard from before, didn't have any media presence at all to speak of, is beating Mickey Kearns so far. Holy cow.
But that is a byproduct, if you will. If the Democrats just turn out in Erie County, the Republicans should never win a countywide race ever.
Correct.
And yet they won 3 last year, and this one's a horse race, which suggests to me that Republicans don't always vote Republican, Democrats don't always vote Democrat, despite the registration there.
Right, but you start off with a 130,000 vote deficit in Erie County if you're a Republican.
Right.
That's what the spread is now.
Deep in the mists of history, there was a guy who helped engineer a Republican victory for a young Italian-American. What was his name? Calabrese? Jambra, that's it.
But
who?
I mean, the fact remains that if Democrats just turn out their vote in Erie County,
they should win.
They should win each and every time. And they're the numbers that we have right now. And it shows Marinucci up better than 10,000
How
votes,
could that be?
with 55% of the precincts reported.
And I'll tell you why that could be. It could be because a lot of the media that the Republican consultants are giving their folks to use is turning people off. And the harsh negative tone, not only of Chris Collins, but also of people down ballot, okay, is reflective of the harsh negativity that the president uses. It may work very well in Texas. It may have helped Beto O'Rourke become a footnote in history and Ted Cruz, Lion Ted, come back. But in around here, beautiful. But around here, it seems maybe to have been the scorpion's tail stinging Republicans.
But, and I have to, Mickey Kearns is not your traditional Republican. Mickey Kearns is a guy who, until last election, last year, was a registered Democrat, ran as a Democrat, something of a renegade Democrat in the Assembly. So he's not
Palladino Democrat.
I'm sorry?
Palladino Democrat.
A Palladino Democrat, if you will. But, I mean, Democrats come in different political hues and shades in Erie County, and he was elected, and he got elected countywide. So it's not like he's a traditional Republican hardliner.
The fact that Pat Burke is beating another Palladino Democrat, Bolin, the fact that Marinucci is, at the moment anyway, besting Mickey Kearns
by a pretty healthy margin.
By a pretty healthy margin. This speaks well for Nate McMurray's chances.
And Bruce is right. I mean, she had very little media presence.
Almost nothing.
Almost nothing as a campaign. And yet she's ahead. And
a few television ads towards the end.
Few, very few.
That she helped with. To the extent that you know this, Bruce, how much help did she get from Mark Poloncarz?
I'm sorry, who?
You know, the guy who's got the big office at the county office.
Oh, the convention center guy with all the $500 million project nobody has the money for.
Because
I frankly don't know, but what we're seeing is Republicans actually coming home, as Carl's pointed out correctly, in the collar counties. Democrats were very motivated to do so. I had stories today from Amherst, north of Klein Road, where the turnout up there was just insane. It's like presidential year levels and beyond, okay? That's what's going to help McMurray. That's what's helping Marinucci. That's what's helping these other candidates.
And you see those as blue votes? You see
absolutely,
those as Democratic votes?
Yes.
You concur, Carl?
Yeah.
Those are blue votes. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to break the news to you guys, but we exist. Some of us even have hunting licenses.
Not many.
Not
many, but a few. There are exceptions to every rule.
I think we've just about winded the stem off of this one.
Oh, I've got more.
Oh, yes. I want to give you a chance to take a couple of deep breaths because the top of the hour is coming and we're going to be back. So, Scott and Mary Alice, back to you.
Very good. Excellent analysis from Carl and Bruce. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And, you know, we'll continue to watch. The results are coming in. We'll check back in with Michael Wooten. He's in our newsroom coming up at 11 o'clock over on Channel 2 as well.
Yeah, it looks like it's really turning into a little bit of a nail biter and maybe closer than some of us thought it was going to be, but exciting nevertheless. It is our democratic process, and clearly Western New Yorkers came out really in large numbers today, and they're letting their feelings be known.
Thanks for watching us tonight, and we will see you over on Channel 2 at 11 o'clock. Have a good evening.
Kirsten Gillibrand, who defeated challenger Shelley Farley.
And first, we're going to get to the race for governor out of the way. NBC News is projecting that incumbent Andrew Cuomo has won his third term, beating Republican gubernatorial candidate Mark Molinaro. And we're going to look at Gillibrand here also. She obviously has won here 72% to 28%. All right, let's get back now to New York 27, the congressional race now, where we have extensive team coverage for you tonight.
Our Dave McKinley joined Nate McMurray's campaign as they await results. But first, we'll check in with Two on Your Side's Ron Plants. He is live following the Collins campaign tonight. Ron?
We are here actually at the Planing Mill building. This is just off of Elm Street in downtown Buffalo, and we are told that Congressman Chris Collins is here now watching the returns of this race. I will point out that when I arrived here, I asked to go inside the building and speak to the congressman on camera, and I was told he was not available to do so. And then we were told that this is private property and that we should leave this particular location, actually to leave the building, I should point out, and that the congressman again may be down later to speak with us. We will point out that a number of times today we did attempt to reach the congressman or his campaign directly to find out what his location would be so that we could speak with him as the results came in and when the results finally did determine a winner. And we were told that he would not be making any location available to us. He would tell us when he was ready, in essence, was the tone of his message. So again, we are told that he is in this building. We are waiting for him to come down and speak with us. And of course, we'll have more when he does do so, when that happens here on Channel 2 News. Obviously, his Democratic opponent, Nate McMurray, is down in Hamburg, from what we understand, and Channel 2's Dave McKinley is down there at that location with the McMurray campaign. Dave?
Yeah, and the mood in this room has turned somewhat somber all of a sudden. I witnessed a short time ago members of Nate McMurray's family being ushered back to see him, where he's been watching the returns in a room where you can't see right now. He's been cloistered there for the last hour or so. His family members were allowed to go back and speak to him. When they came back, they weren't smiling. We do know that a lot of the supporters who've been here throughout the night, a lot of them enjoying music and celebrating as they watch television, seeing the indication that Democrats would take over Congress, have now been assembled over here, where we're told that Nate McMurray is going to make a statement probably within the next couple of minutes. So again, the mood turned from cautiously optimistic to not so much just about 10 minutes ago as we were preparing for our live broadcast here at 11 o'clock. And just to repeat, several of Nate McMurray's family members were called back to meet with him briefly in a room beyond the door, beyond these folks here. And when they came out again, they were not celebrating. They didn't have smiles on their faces, unless they're really good poker players. It could be an indication of news that they didn't want to hear tonight. This was, of course, a campaign that wasn't supposed to get much traction against an entrenched incumbent enjoying a large majority for his party of Republicans over Democrats in the district. That, of course, changed with the indictment of Congressman Chris Collins on insider trading charges. Suddenly, it became a horse race. Suddenly, the National Democratic Party showed some interest in getting some money behind Nate McMurray. And we do expect to hear Nate McMurray from the podium shortly as the first speaker prepares to drop a microphone. And it may turn out to be that kind of night for the McMurray campaign. So we'll send it back to you for now. Again, we expect to hear from Nate McMurray any moment now.
Dave McKinley, and as we just saw scrolling there, with 56% of the precincts reporting in Chris Collins's and McMurray's race, Chris Collins still has a 6% lead here, with more than half of the precincts reporting 52 to 46%. Perhaps they have gotten some more results in that we are not aware of just yet.
Well, we want to bring in Michael Wooten. He's in our information center. And Michael, you have been breaking down these numbers by county. So tell us, what is the latest? It's been close most of the night.
Yeah, Mary Alice and Scott, let me point out right off the bat, the numbers that you're giving off the top there are from the Associated Press. Statewide, looking at this, we have actually gone county by county and inputted those into the map. These are the latest numbers that are really available to anyone right now. I want to start at the bottom of the screen here. These are the totals: 117,903 votes for Chris Collins and Nate McMurray at 114. We're going to talk county by county in a moment. Let's listen right now, though, to Nate McMurray, who's taking the podium. Then we'll be right back.
My life, get to know, and I believe in you. And for most of the night, I believe in you. I believe in you.
Respect. Nate McMurray just saying that they're coming up short.
Love you guys too.
So Nate McMurray has just told the crowd here that they are going to come up a little short tonight. Those were his words.
And that's what you did.
And so he has just pretty much conceded to Chris Collins. We don't know if he's called him or not. But again, the crowd here rather glum.
But if you keep whacking, eventually it's going to break. Yeah.
Nate McMurray saying that if you keep...
Now, we are fighting something big. I mean, look at, let's be honest. We're going against a man who's out on bail. Criminal! Look, he wouldn't face us. He didn't face you for years. He wouldn't face me. I wish I could call him right now and say, good luck with your good luck with your future endeavors, whatever they may be. But I can't make that phone call because there's no way to get a hold of him. There's been no connection. It's a sad thing. It's a sad thing that he ran a campaign where he lied about me. Yeah. At the polls today, a woman came up to me and she said, "You look a lot less scary in person."
Okay, so we were listening there, Nate McMurray. If he is conceding defeat here, which is what it sounds like, certainly not gracious in defeat, they're saying that his opponent had attacked him during the campaign. I want to show you the numbers we have right now, because it's interesting that Nate McMurray is taking to the podium. Right. Again, we showed you the vote totals down here. If you look at the left side of the screen, the margin, Chris Collins is only up about 3,600 votes. That's out of about 230,000 total votes cast today. If you look around, pick where you live, pick your county, you'll see the different margins. The one that really matters here is Erie County, because only about 72% of the vote is in here. That leaves 28% outstanding. Nate McMurray, the M right there, is up 52% to 46%. He has what, about a 4,700 vote lead. Here's the difficulty when you look at the math. All these other counties are fully in. So if he's only up 4,000 votes there, and he has to make up 3,600 votes in order to win the race, you can see maybe why he's conceding right now. This is razor thin, but it does look like there are not enough outstanding votes in Erie County in order for Nate McMurray to make up that difference. This is going to end up being a race decided by a point or two. Extremely close. You've got absentee votes. We're going to hear, of course, what Nate McMurray has to say there at the podium and what Chris Collins may or may not have to say tonight. But certainly a close race, as you can see here. Let's toss it over right now to Erie County Democratic headquarters in Larkinville, where our team coverage continues with Kelly Dudzik, who's following the situation and the reaction to all this there. Kelly?
Yeah, well, so far, Michael, I don't think anyone knows that Nate McMurray just gave that speech in Hamburg. They may be checking their phones and finding out, but I didn't hear any groans or boos or any sign of disappointment, so I think word just hasn't gotten out yet because everybody here is watching national coverage, and then local coverage is up on a screen behind me where they've really been watching some of these assembly races that just haven't been called yet. Monica Wallace trying to keep her seat, Patrick Burke trying to gain a seat in the 142nd district here in New York State. So I don't think word has really gotten around yet that Nate McMurray just spoke in Hamburg that you saw on Channel 2. So once that word gets out here, I will bring you that reaction tonight, and I'll also be posting updates as we get more announcements of winners here in Larkinville. Reporting live in Larkinville tonight, Kelly Dudzik, Channel 2 News.
Thanks very much, Kelly. We appreciate that. We, of course, have live coverage of tonight's election on the go, too, on WGRZ.com, as well as our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube pages. But right now, we want to go back out to Nate McMurray's campaign headquarters in Hamburg to see what's going on there tonight.
That allows a guy like Collins to get elected. Don't stop believing in what we were fighting for. No great victory happens or is defined by one battle. It's defined by many, many battles that we work together on. And we're going to have a great victory as they come. And I don't feel sad, I feel grateful. I feel grateful to get to know you. I feel grateful for the kindness and the love you showed me. And I feel grateful most of all that I ran a campaign that my two sons can be proud of. Moses and Luke, I am proud of you. I love you. And someday when you look back at this time, know your dad did everything he could to make you proud. All right. You guys okay? A little bit? You're gonna be okay. Come on. We're gonna be all right. Remember who was here a couple days ago? Remember who was here a couple days ago? Talia Shire, right? Yeah. Who was Talia Shire? Yo, Adrian, can you hear me out there? Remember, Rocky won. Rocky didn't win. He looked like I do right now. He was all beat up. His face looked like hamburger. He lost. But remember, there was Rocky too. Thank you so much.
Nate McMurray there, which appears to be a conciliatory speech there. However, no one has really called the race yet. We do want to let you know that. The last we had reported was 56% of the precincts in. However, that was quite a speech there, a concessions type speech.
We're going to go to Dave McKinley. Go right ahead, Dave. He's got Nate McMurray with him right now. Dave, go right ahead.
Yep. Nate McMurray just stood up on the podium and did something that absolutely you didn't want to do tonight. You had to thank your supporters, and you started out by saying we're going to come up a little bit short. Obviously disappointing. I'd like to know what's going on right here in here.
Well, I'm sad, but I'm proud of what we did. I'm proud that we stood up to Mr. Collins, and I'm proud that so many people across Western New York joined us. And it was a great experience. And we ran this campaign the right way. I didn't lie. We ran commercials that I'm proud of, and we did this with dignity. And I think I'm sad that I let down these people here because I know they want to change so badly. But I'm proud that we can hold our. If you do the right thing and you fight for what you believe in, you can always hold your head high. And today we're proud that we did that.
What do you think went wrong?
It's just very difficult to win in this district. It's a big area. It's bigger than Rhode Island. And we were driving around. There's a lot of people to see, and everything had to go right. And when you got a guy who's got so much money pounding you and lying about you, I barely recognize myself after all those commercials.
When it's 11:14 now. You probably stood up at the podium at about 11:05. When did you know it was over?
About 20 minutes before that.
I
just know. I could just tell by the way the numbers were coming in. I don't want to make these people suffer. They've been here all day. They've been working. I want to say, we gotta regroup for the next battle. And like I said, I wish I could call Mr. Collins, but I can't.
If he has to step aside, and if there should be a special election, do you think we would hear from Nate McMurray again on this race?
We'll have to see, but I think I right now I want to take a nap. It's been a long fight. I need to relax. I think. Go ahead.
You did one thing though where you said you wanted to tell your supporters you're going to be all right. Why was that important?
Because I saw a lot of sadness in the. I mean, I love these people, and I saw a lot of people with a lot of tears in their eyes and sadness. And I want to say we are going to be all right. There's more. There's always other opportunities to fight. There's always other opportunities to do the right thing. And I want to know that you just don't give up. You got to keep believing in what you're fighting for.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us live
and
here.
Ms. McKinley, thank you for doing your job throughout the election. You did a great job.
I just do my job.
Thank you, sir.
All right. There you go. Nate McMurray joining us live here on Channel 2 and exclusively. Obviously a disappointing night. Obviously having to tell his supporters something he didn't want to. Says he knew about 20 minutes before his announcement here that he had lost the race to Chris Collins. He indicated from the podium that he didn't call Chris Collins because he couldn't get a hold of him. We'll have more election night coverage after this.
Thank you very much, Dave. Before we go to break, we do want to note that nobody has called the race as of this hour. There is 87% of the precincts reporting. The race is now 50 to 48%. It is razor close with, I believe, 2% to the other third-party candidates. So it is not over. He may concede and he may very well lose, but it is still too close to call.
We're going to continue to follow and watch. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more analysis. Well, amidst all the wind in this morning's rain, it actually wound up being a pretty warm day. 62 the high. A lot colder for the rest of the week, though.
Once again, thank you for joining us on election night. We continue to follow the most important race right here in Western New York for New York 27.
Only 87% of the precincts reporting, so if you're still holding out hope that maybe Nate McMurray can pull this off, you can say he's got a chance. Right now, Chris Collins, though, ahead by just 1 percentage point. Now, a couple races that have been called. Governor Cuomo has defeated Republican Mark Molinaro, and Kirsten Gillibrand has won re-election for U.S. Senate.
Right now, let's bring in two on your side, Steve Brown, who is standing by on our set with some analysis on tonight's races. Steve?
Yeah, you raise an excellent point. There's still, a significant amount of the vote to come in, 13% according to our results. But Carl wants to jump in as to why he thinks Nate McMurray made the decision to concede the race with that many votes out. Why is it?
Well, having been in campaigns most of my adult life as campaign manager and candidate, I'll tell you what he knows that we don't know. There's a lag time between the time votes come in from the district level, the town level, to the reporting agencies and then come here. He's got people on the ground in those key towns in Erie County. They know the vote already. We don't have it. They do. They knew how much they had to win those towns by in order for Nate McMurray to win the race. I think what's happened here is his people on the ground in those towns have called him and said, Nate, we didn't do it. It's just not going to happen. And that's why he gave that speech.
Because in order to, the first thing you do when you're running a race is trying to figure out how many votes you got.
Exactly.
Right,
how do you
Bruce?
get to 50% plus one?
This is much tighter than anybody ever thought.
Absolutely.
On my best day for Nate, I had him losing by about 3 percentage points. This is much tighter. And frankly, if I were on his team, I would be working to make sure that we're all up bright and early to get those absentee votes counted, because guess what? There might be 10,000 or more absentee ballots sitting there waiting to be counted. And if they could very well break, we just don't know. It's this is one of those undecidables.
But don't absentees generally, because of the way they are, break is basically along the lines of the vote?
You know what? Generally. But guess what? This was a motivated set of electors this time around, right, on both sides. And I don't know how many Larry the Cable Guy might have gotten.
And what we also don't know is how active was each campaign in an absentee vote program.
Right.
We don't know that. And one side may have been more active than the other and produced better results than the other.
Okay. Bruce, you thought that perhaps there were some missteps by the McMurray campaign, items that they didn't do that they should have.
But you know what? He's obviously positioning himself to run should there be a special election,
We've seen that.
or in 2020. He gave a gracious concession speech. He got out ahead of the news, and he got out ahead of everybody to say it's not there. Hold your head up high. We fought the good fight. Holy cow! When was the last time you saw a politician sounding like a graceful leader? It's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm verklempt.
And as Nate McMurray said, Rocky lost and Rocky won. There is a Rocky 2, so stay tuned, folks.
Yeah.
It could be again. That's our coverage right now. We're headed to a break, and we'll see you soon.
High wind warnings are still in effect for parts of western New York tonight. Those winds have been powerful enough to take out trees and streetlights and cause a lot of other damage around the area. And if you can safely share them with us, be sure to send your photos and videos from tonight's storm on social media using the hashtag #BeOn2. Despite that, a lot of people still got out and voted today.
They did. Heather Waldman is here with our forecast, and it looks like that weather pretty much, Heather's, affected everybody today.
Yeah, that's right, guys. I want to start off real quick with a look at the damage reports from the National Weather Service. Most of them northern Erie County, Niagara County. That is where we did have wind gusts 55 to almost 60 miles per hour. We do still have high wind warnings for Niagara, Erie, and Chautauqua County. Those go until 6 a.m. We also have wind advisories for counties a little bit farther to the east. All of that wind being spurred on by this area of low pressure just to our north. It's also instigating a few showers a little bit closer to home. They've certainly picked up an area over the last couple of hours, but they're not quite as heavy as what we saw earlier today. Scattered showers tonight. Temperatures will drop into the middle 40s. On Wednesday, we don't get out of the 40s. So after the 60s today, I hope you enjoyed it because it is going to be on the chilly side tomorrow. And the wind's still at it. Even though those warnings expire, winds will still gust upwards of 40 miles per hour. But check out future look. The showers a lot more scattered tomorrow. They're actually being driven by the lake a little bit, and we could get a little bit of snow to mix in later Wednesday evening into very early Thursday. Not expecting accumulation out of that, but we do have a couple of shots at some accumulating snow within the 7-day forecast. Thursday's temperatures are stuck in the 40s once again, a good 5 to 8 degrees below average. But let's skip ahead to later on this week real quick. We start off quiet on Thursday, but then first thing Friday morning, it's cold enough that I think we get some slushy snow accumulation in the higher elevation. Then we change over to just plain rain later Friday evening. But check this out. Cold air coming in around the backside of that system Friday night into Saturday. That could be round number 1 of accumulating lake effect snow. Now, I don't want you to worry too much about this one. I don't think it's going to be what we would consider disruptive. There may be a dusting in the northern half of the area and maybe a few shovels needed in parts of the southern tier, northern Pennsylvania. What's more interesting is next week, temperatures will be stuck in the 30s Monday, Tuesday, and I think Wednesday. That could end up being a more impressive lake effect snow setup. We're back with more Channel 2 News tonight in just a bit.
We're going to head right out to downtown Buffalo. Ron Plants is standing by. Chris Collins is addressing the media.
Before you today as the congressman going back to Congress for the next term. Very honored to continue to serve my constituents. I can't thank them enough, the voters.